the transitional government is always undemocratic, because the point of the transitional government is to get us to a point where we could have elections. That's why we call it transitional. If there was elections for a transitional government, it wouldn't be transitional anymore. People have voted. It would just be the government, right? So again, what people have to understand is that we have three periods: the revolution period, the transitional period, and the post-transition period. The post-transition period is when we're going to have democracy. When people say, like, tell us about democracy during the revolution, they're retarded, because revolutions in the mid, you cannot have democracy in the middle of a fucking revolution. You do revolution to bring about democracy. You don't do democracy to have revolutions. It's the other way around. Like when you had the like people are like, oh, your revolution is non-democratic. A revolution can't be democratic because you cannot have ballot boxes for the Iranian people to participate in an election. Like, can you show me how the French Revolution was democratic? Can you show me how the American Revolution was democratic? Did they have elections for the leaders of the American Revolution? No, they didn't, because that is not possible. All you could do is choose a leader based on what seems to be the most popular person that has the highest authority and legitimacy. Even though you can't have election, there are other data that would demonstrate that, so that you could get to a point where you have elections, and then you would choose the leaders based on the ballot box. But this is why for the transition period, the Iranian people have demonstrated, not through the ballot box, but by every other way possible, have shown that they want the leader of the revolution and the transitional period to be Prince Reza Pahlavi and no one else. The Iranian people have not only demonstrated that they want Pahlavi, but they also have demonstrated that they don't want this to be anyone else to be partnering with Prince Reza Pahlavi. In fact, many supporters of Prince Reza Pahlavi stood against him when he was creating a coalition of leaders with Masih Ali-Nejad and Abdullah Motadi and Hamid Ismailion. They were attacking their own leader, like, we don't want these other people as leader. We don't trust them. We only want you as a leader, which eventually was the reason why that whole coalition broke apart. So the Iranian people are not just saying we want Pahlavi. They're saying we want Pahlavi and no one else. So Prince of Pahlavi is only responding to the request of the Iranian people, sometimes against what he himself has been advocating for, because he himself has been advocating for a coalition of leaders, but he gave in to the demands of the people. So everything Princess of Pahlavi does is in response to Iranian people's demands. So when it comes to the behavior of people online, a lot of people say the Pahlavi people are undemocratic. Just look at how vile they are, how much they're attacking and anybody who's not in support of Pahlavi online. This behavior shows that they will one day also be tyrannical and like dictatorial once they get some power. What they don't tell you is that this type of behavior comes from every side. Every side does this to other, like they're examples of all people swearing at each other online. And what they also don't tell you is that the Pahlavi people are the only people among all of these groups that don't have physical violence in their record, right? So if you look at the reformers, they have terror and torture and physical violence in their record. If you look at the Kurdish groups, they have terror, killing of other Kurdish groups, and torture in their record. If you look at the leftists and the MEK, they have killing, terror, and torture in their record. But when it comes to the pro Pahlavi people, yes, sure. Do some of them attack everybody, like go around? I mean, I do that honestly. I swear at people who are anti Pahlavi. Okay, I don't even know why that's wrong. Okay, we get online. We gets very heated and we attack each other online. Right? They do that more than we do. Okay, but what our side hasn't done, which is actually, like, guys, even if at some point they do that, it will take years of Pahlavi supporters to be killing and torturing and raping, honestly, to be able to get to the level of all of these other non-Pahlavi groups. But but it's actually quite impressive that they don't even have. It's like, what I mean. Okay, they have one example of somebody fingering somebody. Okay, but other than that,
What
there is
the
no physical violence.
what the
Yeah,
wait, are you
yeah.
talking
Somebody
about
there
the guy
was there
that
were
got his ass fingered? It was a man, right? That got his a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that
that guy.
was
Yeah.
so
So
crazy.
that was, other than that one small example, okay, there are no examples of murder, there's no examples of torture, and there's no examples of beating anybody up, which is a very impressive clean record of Pahlavi supporters, given that they are the highest number of people, right? So they have the highest number of people, so you would have thought that by now, given the law of large numbers, at least a few percentage of them would have done something crazy by now. So when they tell you like, oh my god, these Pahlavi supporters are so uncivilized, they don't tell you that they have a cleaner record when it comes to behavior than anyone else. One thing, too much, I mean, too much, by the way, has turned anti-Pahlavi. It's like very aggressively anti-Pahlavi. He came out and said, like, "Oh, let me tell you about democracy. You have to listen to the minorities. Like, if minority voices are not included, then this is not democratic." Which actually shows that he doesn't understand how democracy works, because that's the opposite of what democracy is about. He is somebody who has been trying to cancel the revolution, telling people to go home and just start reading, because apparently Iranian people are too uneducated to do revolution right now. So he's trying to have, for the past year, he has been trying to cancel the revolution and telling people to basically leave the streets and go home and study books so that they become like educated enough to actually know what they want, because apparently they have chosen Pahlavi and they have chosen wrong. So too much himself shows that he doesn't understand what democracy is. Res- Paying attention to minorities, that's actually liberalism, classical liberal values. That is not democracy. That is a limitation of democracy. Democracy is the voice of the majority. Paying like focusing on minorities is basically a limitation on democracy, a good limitation of democracy to avoid the tyranny of the majority, but that is not in line with democracy. That is actually a limitation on democracy. So that shows that the people who are saying, who talking about, oh, go learn about democracy, don't even, like, he spent 1 year reading books, but he still doesn't understand the definition of democracy and is lecturing other people about it. Wait, did I answer everything, by the way, Sabina? I think I went over everything.
I think so.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So yeah, sorry, that took a while, but I think that was the most complete explanation of what we're going through when it comes to these anti-Pahlavi campaigns that we're having.
Th-
So just so that you all know, by the way, Pahlavi has, like, when we say we are for Pahlavi, that means we are for four things. These are the four things that Pahlavi stands for. Okay, democracy, or basically the right to self-determination; secularism; border integrity; and equal individual rights before the law.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Shauna.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, I don't, and you may not even have any information or thoughts about this, but apparently Elon's going to be putting in like AI and SpaceX and stuff into space, and he's planning on basically taking over the sky highway. Apparently, there's not a lot of low. I can't remember the word they used for it, but essentially, if he can colonize not Mars, although that obviously that's long-term goal, but even just take over basically the super highway in the sky, he can impact that. And I just kind of, I don't know too much about it. I don't know if you know too much about it, but he's combining that with AI. And then the other thing too is, what are your thoughts just in general when, like, when companies are bigger than governments? Because one of the things we're seeing with like SpaceX and this growth of AI and this new tech is, I feel concerns about our democracy or our democratic republic in the United States kind of eroding and creating that sort of a situation where the people don't really have a say. I mean, already things are just like crazy centralized in ways that anti-monopoly bills were designed to stop, but they've just found loopholes that have functional monopolies. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. That's it.
Yeah. So, AI in space and Mars are not, Mars is so much farther away from the place that they would put AI in space. And the whole point of that is just to Apparently, it's just to make sure that because apparently it's according to them at least, it's going to be the main one of the main limitations of AI is energy and cooling, right? So if you put the processing of AI in space, you have a lot more access to solar energy, and also you could also re basically the energy could then be distributed into space for cooling, so you don't have to worry about cooling as much as you have to worry about it in on Earth. That's the point of putting it in space. Some people have found a lot of problems with that from a
Yeah,
scientific perspective, but
I do remember
yep.
about that. They were talking about the heating and cooling was the concern, but there's also not as much space in that area of space that you can colonize. So there's
I mean, you're
limitations,
not
just like number of.
colonizing; it's like empty
Well,
space.
I'm using the word colonize liberally. I don't mean it in a
I
literal.
mean, there's nobody living there. Last time I checked, so there's nobody to colonize, right?
Okay, take
Yeah.
over. I don't know. Build like if it's the analogy that I heard was that it's kind of like the railroads, where the first person who gets there basically is going to control the rules of that
Um,
infrastructure.
Can I say
yeah, that's
something
gonna be
about it?
I would love that.
Yeah, okay. I don't think you understand how
short.
massive space is. Like, to the point that just between the distance of the moon and Earth, you can fit the entire solar system, like planets next to each other.
No, I
Like, there's
understand.
plenty of space.
No, I understand there's plenty of space in space, but there's technology. Okay, I'm gonna actually just do research on this so I can explain what I'm
It's
talking
okay.
about
It's okay.
better.
I think we're getting off topic, anyways. Regarding companies and governments, companies getting bigger than governments. Honestly, I'm more worried about governments getting too big than companies getting too big. And I do think big companies, are a good check on governments. I do believe that I think companies getting too big is not a monopoly, because as long as they're not working with each other, a lot of people think that monopoly is just mean big companies are not monopoly.
I don't
As
think
long as
I
let
don't
me
think
let
big
me let
company.
me
Okay,
actually
okay.
make. I know. I didn't say you, but let me finish my point. I'm just saying that there's no violation of anti-monopoly laws for companies to get as big as possible. Companies getting big means they're producing something useful. That's how companies get big, right? So I'm against monopoly. I think it's good for companies to maintain anti-monopoly laws, but if giant companies are growing, but they're competing with each other while they're growing, well, then let them grow as long as they're competing with each other, right?
Okay, but what about when they
Um,
don't have competition? Like Amazon functionally has no competition. Half of the
Am-
country is dependent on them.
Amazon
But
has
think
no
what
Amazon has no competition on what product, and what service that they have no
delivery,
competition.
like functionally. I mean, everybody uses them.
Everybody uses. No, that's not true. Just because many people use them because they prefer their service, but there are other options for delivery. There are many other options for delivery, but people use them because they prefer their service. You can't punish companies for providing better services, right? You
I'm
don't want
not
to punish them.
saying punish them.
If a company is managing to get a big section of the market share because their service or their product is superior, the government getting involved and saying no to that is basically punishing serving your customers better than other people. We don't want to do that, right? We want to basically reward companies for having a superior product or service. Companies growing is a good thing, because how do companies grow? Companies grow if a company is growing, they only grow by providing a service or a product better than other companies. That's how you grow. That's how economies grow. The reason why America is a superpower is because it has the biggest companies. That's something that Americans are proud of. Look at Europe. It doesn't, like in the tech sector, it doesn't have a single company as large of American companies.
No,
That is something that America.
I
But
am, but
let me actually let me actually make my points, and then maybe you could get in.
okay,
Is that
okay,
okay?
okay. Yeah, I'll shut up for a second.
Yeah. Okay. So the main sources of power that we have to look at, right, are governments, companies, and individuals but individuals basically, so this is what we have to be mindful of, right? So what we have to the centralization of power is something that we should be worried about. The power itself should not be something that we're worried about. Power, we need power. We need some centralization of power. So we have to come up with a balance of how much centralization of power we want, right? Individuals don't have much leverage because they're just individuals. But individuals usually get to have leverage through companies or governments. Companies are supposed to be a representative of individuals, and individuals get to represent themselves through these companies by their purchasing power. They get their purchasing power by exchanging their labor for that purchasing power, or so you give your labor. So the more, so in the market, it's not very democratic. The more you give, the more purchasing power you have, and the companies will be serving you, the companies, through their products and services. The companies are both a source of you gaining that leveraging power, because you give your labor to them to get that economic agency as a leverage of power. And then those same companies are also a place where you use your economic agency that you got from the companies to then have an influence, have an impact by buying the product and services that makes your life better, right? So that is a non-democratic system. The more you give, the more you could take from it. But the companies are supposed to be a representative of our a source, and also a destination of our economic agency. But then we have the government. The government is supposed to be an equalizing force, where the your wallet becomes less influential, not completely irrelevant, but less influential. And you, just by being a citizen, your government gets to act on your behalf, and then with your vote, you have some political agency. So then, with the companies as a representation of your economic agency, the government is supposed to be a representative of your political agency. So, as in people who believe in classical liberal values, we care about the individual. We want the companies to grow. We want the government to also be influential, but we want the government to become powerful. But we want, in both cases, the economic power of companies to not be centralized. So that's why we're against monopoly. And also the political power of our government, we don't want it to be centralized as well. That's why we believe in Montesquieu's three branches of government, basically checks and balances, and all of that stuff, right? So when it comes to companies, we want the companies to grow, but the best way to make sure that the power of the companies do not become too centralized is by making sure that they are competing against each other. So if one company is becoming so big, it's also competing against other big companies. And this is why we also believe in global trade, because even if you manage to become a big player in your own country, because the goal of these companies is to basically compete, win competition on a global scale, they have to worry about other companies from China, and allowing other companies to come into your country and compete with the companies in your own country. Because even if you have dominated in your own country, you have to worry about all of a sudden like a Chinese manufacturer coming into your country and competing with your cars that you're making or whatever. So this is why lower tariffs and free trade among different countries basically is a good way to basically stop monopolies, because you're constantly competing with other companies. Samantha, these thumbs downs is really not helping. If you have something to say, like maybe write down why you're against it, put it in the chat, because I keep missing my point where I am. Like write it in the chat so I could actually respond to what your point is, because just thumbs down is not like, I don't know.
Sorry.
Okay. No, but write your points, because I want to have something to respond to. But
She's
what
like,
was I? What was I?
boo! Can't
Boo! No. Every
this
time I
guy
say free,
sucks.
every time I say big companies, she's like boo. Every time I say free trade, she's like boo. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. We love you. No, keep doing it. It's kind of adorable. What was I saying? Oh yeah. When it comes to so with governments, we try to avoid centralization of power. With America has done a very good job to try to reduce the centralization of power. So you could come up with a structure of government that avoids that. But also the big companies also avoid centralization of power in the government. You know how? Because when your companies are growing, that's because your people are getting richer. So here's when you have here's when you have democracy. Democracy is a result of the power of the people. Democracy is not just something that we wish for and it happens because we believe it in as a value. Democracy is the deterministic result of the balance of the people's power increasing relative to their government, so they have leverage over their government, and that power is economic. That leverage is economic leverage. If you actually track when countries become democracy, it's usually after the relative wealth of people becomes high compared to the relative economic power of their government. Democracy is a natural result of the people getting richer on average relative to the economic power of their government. So if allowing, when companies get richer, that's individuals getting richer, because that's your income, that's your 401k, that's your pension, that's your purchasing power that is getting bigger. So, and the companies growing means that this main source of the government's revenue is tax income, because people are getting richer, they're trading more, and they have to pay tax more, and that makes the government answerable to the people. And that's why it's actually a good check on government, the power of the government, for people to keep getting richer and richer and richer, and your companies to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Because even if the government doesn't want to serve the people, because all of a sudden the power has become too centralized, and the government has the idea that, oh, maybe I could basically become dictatorial and not serve my people. If you have really giant companies in your country, then what happens is that it's in the best financial interest of these giant companies for everything to continue being the benefit of the people, because these people are their customers and their workers. So you could actually force your governments to become more democratic, because democracy is good for business. So big companies is a good check on government as well. So this is why I'm not against big companies. I'm against monopoly, but I'm not against big companies. And in fact, I want my companies in my country to be a, a force to be reckoned with, and my governments to be afraid of of the private sector in my society. But okay, yeah, thank you, Samantha.
Okay.
But yeah, Shauna, sorry that took.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't realize it was gonna open a can of Armin talk. But okay, so I have a couple points about that though. What about during? Okay, there's a little bit of a problem with this, which is like during the kind of high level censorship years where you couldn't say literally anything until Elon